Welcome back to the Dark Vault. Today, we open a file that the local authorities in Navajo County, Arizona, tried to scratch out of their logs. In the summer of 2025, a young wildlife photographer named Ethan rented a remote cabin deep within the reservation lands. He wanted to capture the raw beauty of the desert at night. The locals warned him before he left the town. They told him, "If you hear someone calling your name from the bushes, don't look. If you hear a deer crying like a human baby, lock your doors. And most importantly, if you hear whistling in the wind, turn off all your lights." Ethan laughed it off as old native folklore. He didn't know that some legends don't stay in storybooks. Some legends wait in the dark, watching you through the glass. It was the fourth night when the silence of the desert fractured. Around 2 a.m., Ethan was editing photos when his motion sensor security lights outside snapped on. He crept to the window and looked through the blinds. Sitting just 30 feet away on a rock was a massive timber wolf. But something was sickeningly wrong with its anatomy. Its spine was bent at an unnatural angle, and it was sitting completely upright on its hind legs. Suddenly, the wolf opened its mouth, but a howl didn't come out. Instead, it spoke in the exact clear voice of Ethan's mother, who was living 2,000 miles away in Boston. "Ethan, honey, it's cold outside. Let me in." Ethan's blood turned to ice. His mother wasn't there. The creature outside was wearing the concept of his mother like a mask. It was a Skinwalker, an ancient, dark shaman who has traded their humanity to shapeshift into animals and mimic the voices of the people you love the most to lure you into the jaws of the dark. Ethan backed away from the window, breathing heavily, dropping his camera onto the wooden floor. The voice outside didn't stop. It kept cycling through different voices. First his mother, then his childhood best friend, and then a voice Ethan recognized instantly, his own. Outside, the creature began to shift. The sickening sound of snapping bones and tearing flesh echoed through the silent desert night. The wolf's body stretched, changing into a grotesque, towering figure. It was the body of a man, but covered in patchy, decaying deer hide, with long, jagged antlers protruding from its skull. The skin didn't look like it belonged to the creature. It looked like it was stitched together, hanging loosely over an empty framework of pure malice. The Skinwalker approached the front door, its steps uneven but incredibly fast. Thud, thud, thud. It began to beat against the heavy oak wood, its jaw unhinging as it let out a human scream twisted into a demonic roar. Knowing the door wouldn't hold forever, Ethan rushed to his camera equipment. He turned on his night vision video camera, aiming it directly at the windows, hoping the bright infrared light might blind the beast. Through the small digital screen, the world turned a ghostly green. And that's when he saw it. The Skinwalker was no longer at the door. It was crawling on the cabin's metal roof. Suddenly, the glass of the ceiling skylight shattered into 1,000 pieces. A shower of sharp glass hit the floor, and a long, pale, clawed arm reached down, swinging violently through the dark. Ethan fired his camera flash repeatedly. The blinding white bursts of light illuminated the monster's face for a fraction of a second. A hollow, faceless entity with empty black sockets where eyes should be, wearing a skull of a dead stag. The creature hissed, retreating back into the roof shadows, temporarily blinded by the flash. Ethan didn't wait for a second attack. He grabbed his car keys, burst through the back door of the cabin, and sprinted toward his old truck parked in the dirt drive. Behind him, the whistling in the wind grew deafeningly loud. He jumped into the driver's seat, slammed his foot on the gas, and the truck roared to life, tearing down the empty, unlit desert highway. For 10 miles, there was nothing but the sound of his engine and his own racing heartbeat. He breathed a sigh of relief, believing he had escaped the valley. He looked up at his rearview mirror to check the road behind him, but the road was empty. Instead, the mirror showed the back seat of his own truck. Sitting perfectly still in the dark passenger seat behind him was Ethan, another version of himself, wearing his exact clothes, staring back at him through the mirror with a wide, unblinking, static smile. The copy tilted its head and whispered in Ethan's own voice, "Why are we driving so fast, Ethan?" The next morning, a state trooper found Ethan's truck parked on the shoulder of Route 160 30 miles outside the reservation. The engine was still idling, and the driver's side door was left wide open. All of Ethan's camera gear, his phone, and his wallet were untouched on the front seat. The video camera was still recording, but the final 3 hours of the tape showed nothing but an empty cabin roof and the sound of distant wind. Ethan was never seen again. The Navajo County Police filed it as a missing persons case, suggesting he got lost in the desert heat. But the local tribe members know better. They say that if you visit that section of Route 160 at midnight, you might see a young wildlife photographer walking along the highway, waving for a ride. But if you pull over to help him, look closely at his shadow, because it won't be shaped like a man at all. The desert hides secrets older than our cities, and some hunters never stop tracking. If you survived this nightmare in the Arizona woods, hit that like button, subscribe to The Dark Vault, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if you heard your own voice outside your window? Turn off your lamps, lock your windows, and never listen to the whistling in the dark. Good night.